You do. You did that. Yes. Let me share that. I thought they want. You're on that. Hello, everyone. Yes, all right. I'm gonna let you.
Good. Good. Nice weather. Nice.
Beautiful.
Nice to
weather.
the change up a bit, right?
Other nature's playing with us. I like it.
Right.
We'll have just another snow.
Yeah, it's gonna snow.
No,
Right.
say snow.
They have to.
We have to have it.
Yeah.
It never fails.
Us bright guys need hats when it's cold.
Get rid of the inventory and the winter gear.
Right. We can't have this beautiful weather and then it's a calm before the storm. It usually happens every year.
You got
Right.
one more, but
Right.
we're gonna say, no, not this year, I hope.
Okay, we can play with that.
Exactly.
Okay. Welcome back to Chicago. Ready? This evening, we're joined by two dynamic leaders running to represent Illinois and bring real solutions to our communities. First, we have David Dewar, a longtime resident of Chicago's Mount Greenwood neighborhood, a successful entrepreneur in real estate and life insurance, and former election judge. David is running for Illinois State Representative in the 35th District, driven by his motto, "We the people, not the politicians." Not they, the politicians. He's committed to fighting corruption, strengthening public safety, putting families first through his innovative 8-5 strategy. Is that it?
Yeah, 8-5 strategy.
Okay, let's make sure. I'm excited to hear about that. Joining him is Skylar Duensing, a 25-year-old community organizer and founder of the United States Patriot Society. Skylar is an advocate for faith, family, and freedom, dedicated to empowering communities, defending the American dream, and bringing conservative solutions to Illinois families, from education reform and parental rights to veterans support and economic growth. Skylar is committed to making Illinois a place where families can thrive. We'll be diving into their backgrounds, their policies, and their vision for Illinois and asking the tough questions our community wants answered. Let's get started.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Dave, Illinois is known for public corruption. How would your public integrity police unit work, and how would you enforce transparency in politicians' funding?
Well, I would go with the DOGE. We had it on a federal level with the Department of Government Efficiency, and we need it through the state of Illinois. So that's something that we've been screaming about recently with the CTU, the Chicago Teachers Union, which we refer to as the Communist Teachers Union, and they're afraid of a forensic audit. So what we need to do on a statewide level is we need a forensic audit. We need to look and follow the money and make sure that the money is being used more efficiently. A lot of times, if you follow the money, it's being paid off to politicians and creating a lot of different corporations or LLCs to fund these different things. Like, for instance, when we were at the CTU, Skylar had made a point that since 2010, $24 million in counting has been used. Over 24 million has been funding the Democrat Party. So people's taxpayer dollars are being used to fund their own demise. So something that should be done is, like myself, I've been in Chicago for 43 years in Mount Greenwood in the south side of Chicago, and a lot of people are upset with police. And myself, something that people might not know about me is I was arrested in front of my house on February 17, 2014. I filed a federal civil lawsuit and I won for false arrest. In the process, and I went to a jury trial and I had to represent myself because nobody wanted to represent me, but I found out a lot about police officers and things. So there's something called the Invisible Institute. called CPDP.co, which stands for the Chicago Police Data Project. And it shows 3 forms of accountability for police officers. That's civil complaints against them, that's police officers complaining against them, and use of force with a taser and with a gun. That should be implemented here in Chicago and all major metropolitan cities to make sure any rogue police officers, they have the police cams, are doing this. They're policing their communities and not targeting individuals. Even though I am a law enforcement individual, there is technology such as this that are not being implemented. So they should be implemented, and that's actually in a book that I'm writing right now, and it's going to be coming out within the next year. So it's just another way to make the community feel safe if there are any rogue police officers. But on the other hand, I'm against the Safety Act. So we'll get more into that House Bill 3653, whereas of right now, anyone that files a complaint against the Chicago police can do it anonymously, and they can ruin their careers. And they'll, file a complaint, and because they're doing it anonymously and they're not filing an affidavit, there is no repercussions. So there's a lot of different things that I would do as a legislator as well to make sure that money's being designated properly and taxpayer dollars are, and there is efficiency in law enforcement and all forms of government.
Good points, Dave.
Yeah, thank you.
Piggyback on that, Skylar.
Yeah. So obviously, as you're aware of, we have a lot of issues here in the state of Illinois. In particular, some of it has been, where are our tax dollars going? Well, that same approach is true also at the federal level, and that's what President Trump had brought to the table with Elon Musk with the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE. I think the American taxpayer is beyond sick and tired of seeing their hard-earned tax dollars, their money more of that should be their paycheck going to fund things that no longer put them first, things that are just absolutely frivolous. We're spending money as a government at the federal level, including here at the state level in the state of Illinois, like morons, to be quite frank. We know that a lot of this money is going to policies and proposals and projects that no longer put the people first. A lot of it, the money never even goes to some of the projects that they said they were funding. One of the ones we could talk about too is the transgender studies in a place like Vietnam. I have friends who have fled Vietnam and have come here to the United States. They said we don't even have working sewer systems there. I mean, when their streets flood there, they have water all over the streets that's a part of the sewage system. So I think the last thing that those people actually care about in Vietnam is whether or not they have a transgender study. So I think a lot of what we see here at the state level and also at the federal level is really, it's just money laundering. And as we've seen too, through different things like the donation processor to Ukraine and others, it's money that has been laundered and funneled back to the Democrat Party and the corrupt political establishment. We'll talk a lot more about that today. But at the federal level, I think we have to continue to expand some of those cuts and vet that process and make sure too that, if we actually are going to be a party or government, right? So let's just talk about government, regardless of political party and affiliation, is if you want to actually care about people, you want to put your countrymen, your constituents first, your voters, then the way to do that is make sure that their tax dollars are not being used and abused. We're all paying into the system, and we all know there's going to be social safety net programs. We should continue to fund those things. But what we have to do is make sure that we're cutting the waste, the fraud, and the abuse from government from the top down, from the federal, state, and local level. Because I think, by far, the American taxpayer is sick and tired of seeing it happening. And if you're actually about compassion, like the Democrat Party claims to be about, then you'd actually want to make sure that more of those resources can go to the people who need those resources the most, the aid, rather than laundering the money and, frankly, just waste it.
And let me add on that too, is we during the holidays, we see homeless, and you guys cover this, Chicago Flips, right? We see so many homeless people out there, and we see people that are waiting on Section 8 vouchers and certificates and waiting for housing that are financially challenged. They're wasting taxpayer dollars in Chicago and abroad to the veterans that need the money, the homeless, good social programs, and this abuse is offensive to me because, I gotta pay state income tax, I gotta pay the state of Illinois 4.95, call it 5%. And I wanna make sure our money is being used. In Skylar, we talk about that all the time. That money should be appropriated, not misappropriated to the right cause.
Yeah, well, I think just ask yourself a very simple question is to go, if we're gonna be paying into this system anyway through our tax dollars, what do you want the money to go to, right? Do you want more transparency in government to know where your tax dollars, your hard-earned money, your income, where's that money going? Do you want it to go to fund Democrat and establishment pet projects like we've seen here in the state of Illinois and at the federal level? And the federal level, they're playing with so much money, it's just absurd.
Sure.
But do you want to see it go to things like that? Do you want to have a government that's more transparent, that serves you more, so we can restore trust in our American system, in our republic? Because really, at the end of the day, these are supposed to be public servants, representatives of you, the American people. And if they're doing that with your tax dollars, you have to ask yourself, are they really representing me? And think about it. How much good could we be doing with all of this wasted money to solve the real issues that face us all here at home?
We talk about the 250-year anniversary. We're back to the Boston Tea Party 250 years ago with taxation without representation. So basically, to answer the question, yeah, both of us, as you hear, definitely we're going to slam the sledgehammer and clean it up.
Yeah, you're taxed worse now than ever before.
Yeah.
We fought a revolution over a lot lower taxes.
Sure.
So it makes you wonder what is going on right now in our country and in our government.
So now you have someone who understands the waste, fraud, and abuse, understands you all like to, talk about Republicans with the police. Dave understands the policing where, we need some reform. We do.
Sure. Sure.
And the road police should be held accountable.
Yeah.
So that's great.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, both of you. What inspired you to run for office? Who wants to go first?
Dave, you want to kick that off?
Yeah, sure. So I've run before. I ran in 2019 against Alderman Matt O'Shea. He's the incumbent right now in the 19th ward. But before that, I was an election judge. So I was an election judge for 12 years in Mount Greenwood, and they're mostly Democrats. So as an election judge, if anyone did that before, you got to get up at 5 in the morning and set up till 6, and then the polls will open up at 6 a.m. Well, I'll go to a place, Dunkin' Donuts, like right down the block, about a mile from where I have my polling place, and I'll get my coffee because you need coffee. It's 5 in the morning, right? So I drive past the cemetery, and I'm like, I see lights. So I kid around with the Democrats, and I say to them, hey, didn't I see you guys getting votes in the middle of the night? Like when in the cemetery. I said, you guys never stop, and they're like, So I play with them because there's so many irregularities. So the thing is, as an election judge, I've seen the process, and I said to myself, you know what? I don't like this. I want to make a change. I want to have a voice in the community because as a business person and as a member of the community for 43 years, I wanted to have a voice. So I decided to run for alderman, and then I've run a couple times. A lot of people question me because I ran as a Democrat, but I ran as a JFK Democrat. So, which it was interesting because I would wear my Trump hat here, right? And I'd run as a Democrat, and they were confused. And I said, well, you know what? A 1960 JFK Democrat is the same as a 2024 Trump Republican. And I said, I was born 64 years late. Don't get mad at me. Take it up with God. So, I was like, but the thing is, I want to have an impact in the community. I've seen a lot of things. I've had some life experience. And, I've seen a lot of people struggle in the community. If they're not part of the Democrat machine, they don't get a job through their father or their friend, or they get a city job, or they get in the department, then they're struggling. If they don't have an education and they don't become a white collar, if their blue collar opportunities are limited because if they're not part of that political machine. So I wanted to have a difference, and I feel I have, and to really speak out for the little guy, and that's what it's about. There's people out there right now that are struggling. We know that everything's expensive and people are desperate, and they want solutions. They want leaders to say, hey, we're going to create real opportunities, not, fluff and puff and tell you what you need to hear to get elected, but real opportunities. And I feel, as you guys asked, by cutting and making sure that money is not being filtered to bad programs through corruption is a good way to start, and then really creating true opportunities. So the reason why I'm running is to represent the people. I use the saying, it's we the people, not they the politicians. I'm just one of you in the community, and I'm going to extend and represent you when I go to Springfield as state representative.
I think to follow up with what David just said, so again, I'm Skylar Duensing. I'm running for U.S. Congress in Illinois 6th District against Sean Casten. Now, like what David just said, I came from no political background. I didn't have a family in politics. My last name, thank God, was not, Kennedy or, well, Kennedy's now a little bit different, but the Clintons or the Obamas or anybody else. No political family or anything like that. So as we talked about in the intro too, I started an organization called the United States Patriot Society. So why did I do that or get involved with politics at all? Especially at a young age, being 25 to run for this office now. It's the youngest you can run for the office. It's because I've gotten real sick and tired of hearing from great people who have been involved in this system in the United States of America, who expected to have honest and accurate representation from their government, from their public servants, who came to me and said, Skylar, I want to be involved. I want to have a voice, but I don't feel like this system represents me anymore right now. And we all agreed on the fact that we've been used up and abused and lied to by a system that no longer cares about us. So I formed this organization, the United States Patriot Society, to network with families, individuals, communities all across the country to push back against communism in our government, to give the American people a voice again. Not just me being your voice, but us being a collective voice together. Because now, especially too with my congressional run, if I'm going to be doing this, I'm supposed to be a public servant for you. I'm supposed to listen to you much more than I talk, although I could talk for a very long time about this because I want to fight for you. So I started that organization, the Patriot Society, and decided to run for office to 100% bring your voice back to Washington, D.C., back into governance, into politics, and to bring a few things to Washington that I think have completely left Washington, D.C., and for the most part, our government, which are godly values, moral fortitude, and unwavering resolve for you, the American people. So I've had experience, although, me being a young guy, I've had experience too, writing and endorsing legislation, passing legislation too, here in the state of Illinois, to require that people swear an oath to the United States Constitution, the Constitution of the state of Illinois, and also to expose some of the radical things that are pushed on our children in the classrooms and in grocery stores and other places, the supermarket, things that are just absolutely absurd. So I want to bring back wholesome values to Washington, D.C., bring back your voice. And I've had experience doing that too after my experience at Joliet Catholic Academy. I went on to the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and I started the largest Turning Point USA and Students for Trump chapters there at UW-Madison, and built them into what is still the flagship chapters for Turning Point USA in their entire organization's history throughout the entire nation. And we did that in a very, very liberal area. If you know anything about the University of Wisconsin-Madison, it's hyper liberal. So I think now more than ever, we need bold leaders like myself and like David Dewar and everybody here at Chicago Flips Red who are willing to get to these communities and speak up and say, no, I want to represent you. I want to represent what your interests are, and actually sit down and have a conversation with you and listen to you, and then figure out what we can do together to make sure that this system, the United States of America, actually represents you, and to return it back to a few core principles: faith, family, and freedom, in that order: God, family, and country. So we're fighting for the policies now that you've seen from President Trump: fiscal responsibility, economic prosperity, peace throughout the entire world, and common sense back into our government from the top down, federal, state, countywide, local, and then also to the godly values that you saw from Charlie Kirk. I had the privilege to work very closely with and build those chapters at University of Wisconsin-Madison and be a mentor to me. So the fact of the matter is we have to turn this government back to God. We have to elect godly leaders who have the moral fortitude, who can withstand the highest bidder, as George Washington had said, and people who are rooted into this system, into this country, who have the experience, who actually have that resolve to fight for the American people, to make sure you're not ripped off anymore. Because international communism is on our doorstep, and we see that right now in Washington, and we see that in the state of Illinois. The Democrat Party has largely become the party of communism. So we have to push back against that.
They're the isms, the Marxism, the socialism, and I will say, to double down, faith, family, freedom is important. We've talked about this. We need to bring God into government, and it's not the opposite. And we need godly leaders. So many people say to me, I had some people that are receptive. Other people say, oh, you think you're righteous. If somebody has a relationship with God, or they have a strong faith, they're going to be loyal to the creator. We can't watch these jokers 24/7. They represent us, and that should be their job, because we know there's a lot of good people that will go into government with the right intentions. But then if they don't have a strong base and a strong faith, they're gonna succumb to the temptations, the money, the pride, whatever, the power. And we're saying, we're gonna go in there and we're gonna bring those godly values, as Skylar mentioned, to it. He's gonna do it in Washington, I'm gonna do it in Springfield, and we'll talk more about that as we, continue through this interview.
And keep this quote in mind too, just real quick to add this. George Washington once said too that few men have the moral fortitude and the moral courage to withstand the highest bidder. Look at how much of that you see now in governance. Look at the payoffs. Look at how the media is controlled and everything else. So we need to have people in office who are you. Government of, by, and for the people has to be restored again. And that comes from having wholesome, what should be common sense, although it's not anymore, common sense principles and values and policy in government, again, that actually puts you first. And, if you only answer to yourself, if you're a politician or somebody or a leader who's only going to answer to yourself, well, those values and, that direction, that moral compass is just only dictated by yourself. But if you answer to God and God is your boss, well, all of a sudden now you have a higher moral purpose and a higher moral standard, that moral compass that'll make sure that you don't waver off the line here. And there's that other old saying too, that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So we see a lot of that in Washington, D.C. and in Springfield.
Yeah.
That bold leadership, bold and courageous faith, really.
I think anybody, whether you're a Democrat, independent, or Republican, can get behind and understand what you all are saying and can relate to what you're saying, because this is way past Republican, Democrat, Libertarian. This is about Americans, American values, common sense.
Right.
It's saving our country
Right.
from communism.
Right.
If you're American, if you love your country,
America
stay
first.
Right.
America first. So this goes way beyond
Right.
party lines and who you are.
And that's interesting you say that. So if somebody says to me, Dave, are you Democrat? Are you Republican? I am a constitutional conservative that believes in a biblical worldview with the cornerstone of Christ, Jesus Christ. That is our founders. They knew that.
Exactly.
That we have a
Yep.
moral and we have in order to have liberty, we need people of integrity,
Right.
godly values. So that's what we're bringing back, and we need to be bold and not be ashamed to speak about our faith. And we're not here to judge anyone; that's up to God. But it's here to set a precedent to have that where people are confident in their elected officials, and that's what we're looking to bring back to the people.
You got to be unwavering in that commitment too. And I think it's, to Danielle's point, it's, recognizing this, because really fundamentally, all of us as Americans, not speaking as politicians or leaders, community activists, none of that. It's just saying, an American to an American here is we're going to recognize the few things. We may not agree on everything, and that's okay. That's how this system is supposed to work. That's how our country was founded. That's what has made us so great for 250 years. That's what's going to carry us forward for the next 250 years. We're not going to agree on everything. What we should be able to do is come together and have a peaceful, common sense discussion with one another, put the differences aside and go, hey, what we should be able to agree on is that we want a better, brighter, more prosperous future for ourselves, for our next generation, and our children's children. We want to build a great country for many generations to come. Just look at those things and say, where can we agree on things? Not just where can we disagree to get media hits and everything else, right? Like you see politicians do all the time. It's pointing the blame at the other side. It's what can we do to come to the table and have this discussion and actually try to bring this country forward to better serve the American people.
Yeah, we want a legacy, not just for ourselves, but for the people after us, our kids, our ancestors, our generation. And that's the thing. Have you left the place better than when you first arrived? Or have you left it in shambles?
Right.
And that's where we're going with that. Yeah, that's huge.
It's got to be open debate and discussion too,
Yeah.
and make that the normality again, make that a reality as a country. Normalize those things, because that's how America was founded, was having political discussions. We were all told never talk politics, religion, or social subjects in public. Well, that's how we got into this mess, folks. You got to have those conversations. Otherwise, you're going to leave it up to, politicians and pundits to have those discussions for you. And look what happened. I don't need to tell you, you've been ripped off, and it's not going to be tolerated anymore.
Jay, can you give us a brief overview of the 8-5 strategy?
Yes. So about 3 months ago, there's a gentleman named Kyle. He's with Chicago City Wire, and he interviewed me on this. And I spoke with a guy named David Curd. He's with the Illinois Family Institute. And I said, Dave, because I was at the Freedoms. on November 8th. And that's in Itasca, that's by 5:60 a.m. And they had Doge break. And I asked some of the people on the stage that were quoting a lot of, fraud in government and that. And I said, hey, how many people do we need to go from a super minority, which right now we are in Springfield, to go to a minority to have a seat at the table? And right now, just so people know, there's 118 state reps, and right now it's 78 Democrat and 40 Republican. So they have a super majority. And then in the House or the Senate, there's 59 state senators, and right now there's 40 Democrats and 19 Republicans. And right now, the Democrats can pass anything in the middle of the night, whatever they want, and they typically do that, and then they'll just amend it. The Republicans have no say.
It's a single vote.
Yeah,
Without.
So you can't blame Republicans for this. We keep
Right.
telling you, this is a one-party
It's a
system.
one-party
So
system.
whatever's going on in Illinois, Chicago, blame the Democrats.
Right, they have 100% control. It's as if the Republicans don't even exist. So for them to go from a super minority to a minority, there's the 8-5 strategy. So we need 8 more to maintain the 40 and get 8 more state representatives to go from 40 to 48. And then 19 would go to 24. So we need 5 more state senators. That would allow the Republicans to get on committees. And from what I've been informed by, David Curtin and the levies, that would allow the Republicans to have a say-so at committees. And then with the committees, that's really where the legislation changes. So we need that. And I've been screaming that to all the governor candidates, and nobody's listened. And this is the deal, is if you're gonna run for governor, we want a leader. Got it? Be real straight up there. So the thing is, it's like, okay, you get in there, assuming you're a Republican, whoever that is, that's it. You just have veto power, but the legislators,
Yeah.
without going, and going from a super minority to minority, we have no say so. So we want somebody to lead. So that's what it's about, Zoe. It's about 8 more state representatives. Preferably, we go by Trump Kirk's Republicans in the House, and then 5 more, because it's critical to start reversing these policies. We have the Unsafe Act, which will go through House Bill 3653, and many other heinous legislation. It's a one-party system right now. So I'm screaming this to the mountaintops, where I'll be one of the 8. Maybe David Shepard will be one of the 8. Christine, the governor, will be one of the 5. And we're looking for 8. We have 8 and 5 to make a difference, because this is the deal, is we got to get the governor's seat with the right person, the right candidate. We'll see what happens March 17th, and we got to get at least 8-5. And we also talk about, I'll say this real quick, Trump Kirk. Me and Skylar are not established. We are not rhinos. We are not with the other side. We're Trump Kirk. We have the Trump Kirk MAGA Red International Movement. Trump Kirk, the policies of Donald J. Trump, if you go to donaldjtrump.com/platform, is his 20 base policies. We want to bring those to Washington and also here to Illinois, and the godly values of Charlie Kirk. That's it. So we're going to get some resistance within the party, but we're sticking to that. And that's what we're hoping to do, is to have the common sense policies of Donald Trump. Hey, you might not like his personality, but you don't live with him. You don't wake up with him. I don't wake up with him. I don't think he wants to see me in a way. So I don't want to see him, but I live with his policies, common sense policies, the godly values of Charlie Kirk. So remember that, because you'll be hearing a lot more about that with me and Skylar. We're the founders of the Trump Kirk MAGA Red International Movement. But the 8-5 strategy is very critical. And I'm hoping, Zoe and Danielle, that one of the governors embrace that to show leadership, to lead our Trump Kirk Republicans into Springfield November 3rd.
Right, cool, because you don't want it all done just only through executive action. It'd be great to have a different,
Sure.
governor in office. To have a Republican governor would be unbelievable for the state of Illinois. And actually, bring some things back here to the state and have some prosperity once again, and definitely transparency as well. But you don't want it to only just be executive action, because that can go. Right.
They can bring-
And that's what we have going on at the federal level too right now. We need to elect more MAGA, America First Republicans who put you, the American people, first. Actually send us to Washington, D.C. so that we can align ourselves with the president and continue to deliver this mandate that so many tens of millions of Americans said, went to the voting booth and said, hey, this is what we want. from President Trump. This is what we want in our country right now. This is the new direction we want to go in because we're sick and tired of the abuse we just had for 4 years of Joe Biden. Now look at how much in 1 year things have turned around now. And we talk a lot more about that.
Yeah, and I'll just add in there is, we have the midterms coming up after the primaries on a federal level. And what did they do to Trump 8 years ago? Right? They blocked him because they got one of the House, and then they blocked him, and they screamed impeachment for 2 years.
Right,
And
that's
that-
what they'll do again.
and
It's
they'll do the
impeachment.
same
Yeah.
thing. That's the strategy.
That's
So-
right.
So he won't be able to do anything the last 2 years of his 4 years.
And it'll be distraction
It'll be
after distraction to stop what this agenda is right now for you, the American people. So if you want, continued economic prosperity, you want to continue to deliver on such a level that we
Right.
have already within 1 year of Trump 2.0 here, you got to elect Republicans like crazy right now and actually send them to Washington DC and send them to your state house, your state senate. Because if we don't do that, look at what the Democrat Party has done right now. I mean, they don't even have the majority in Congress, but look at what they've done through these federal judges and everything else right now. Right. So it's a really, quite frankly, it's criminal, and it's a very, very big problem right now. They're actually trying to circumvent your voice as the American people who showed up in masses to vote for President Trump and this direction of our country right now.
And this message is out to the voters.
Right.
So the thing is, you have soft Democrats or even hard Democrats that are leaving. They say the Democrat Party, they didn't leave the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party left them.
They don't listen.
And
They don't listen.
And they're leaving based on policy. We're seeing a lot of that. You
You
guys.
have to look at policy, guys. When you don't let MAGA Kurt scare you, because I know they fear monger you a lot. When we say go, you all have to go look at Donald Trump's policy.
Policy.
Right.
I keep preaching policy
Policy.
because policies affect you.
Right.
That's like he said, you don't have to like the man, you ain't gotta dine with the man, you ain't got to meet the man, but whatever they do, their policies affect you like Joe Biden. We've never met him, but his policies, we're dealing with the devastation of his policies
Right.
right now.
Right.
We are dealing with that, especially in Chicago in our communities,
Right.
especially with illegal aliens and the businesses they are allowed to have, the resources that was taken from us, everything that's going on. We're in the high Bionomics, and how everything was just high. Inflation is coming down thanks
Sure.
to President Trump.
Right.
Everything is starting to even back out. So it's the policies, guys, that we
Policy.
must
Policy.
check out and must pay attention to. And so for right now, the Democrats, Pritzker, Brennan Johnson are blocking the policies. That's why you all keep running to Indiana for lower gas, for no taxes on food, for lower property taxes. That's why you keep running there and not associated with it, because it's policies.
Right. And I will say this, I love Donald Trump. I'm just using the analogy
Yeah, that's just,
because I love Mr. Trump, but the point is this, it's the policies, it's not the personality. So I'm speaking there to the soft Dems and the hard Dems, the independents, the never Trumpers, the people that want to register because you hate everyone, and then the people that are not turning out. We need 90% of registered Republicans to turn out, because guess what? When you don't participate and you don't vote, you get the government you don't vote for. Right? So if you sit in the bar, you complain, and you didn't vote, you're part of the problem. You need to participate, get yourself educated on policies, and you'll find out that you're going to want to ride the red wave. Get involved. guys.
Right. Otherwise too, if you don't do anything about it, but you just sit back and complain, or you turn to the media to tell you what's going on,
Mhm.
you're really kind of doing this to yourself. Now, at the end of the day, government shouldn't do that to you, but as we've seen, especially from the communist left, that's what they continue to prove to you that they're doing, right? They no longer care about you, what your values are, your finances. They don't care about any of that. So, just two policies right there from President Trump to look at is look at the historic tax cuts. Look at the historic investment coming into our country. It's going to bring back jobs and opportunity. And I want to channel that at a federal level here to the state of Illinois. So our great businesses continue to stop leaving. And when they leave, guess what else happens? Now you have less of a tax base, right? So you have less tax revenue. Then they have to, J.B. Pritzker and the Democrats want to continue to increase your taxes. And now you continue to bear that burden, because not all of us can just leave the state of Illinois, right? So what leaves when these businesses leave? That tax revenue, that tax base, jobs and opportunities. So we got to channel that historic investment from the national level and the international level coming into our country back here to the great state of Illinois. And it comes from electing leaders like me, putting me in Washington, D.C., and putting David Dewar in Springfield, so we can push this agenda for you so we can actually put more money, more take-home pay for you, increase our tax cuts, and increase jobs and opportunity. So that's just fiscal responsibility, and that's economic opportunity right now that's coming into our country because of the policies of President Trump. So, I mean, if you don't like President Trump as the man, although like we just said, we both do, we do here in this room, look beyond all of that, look beyond what the media is trying to tell you about, say, well, Donald Trump's mean. Don't look at that. Look at, say, hey, do I have more money now in my pocket? Are the prices of things now on their way to decreasing? Is inflation on its way down? Is the Dow hitting record highs? Do we have record high, record investment into our country?
It's 50,000.
Manufacturing jobs and everything else.
Zero crossing is a
All right.
closed.
All right, so look at all of those things and ask yourself and say, okay, what's more important, what the media is trying to lie to me about? Or what I actually feel every single day when I sit down at the kitchen table?
We were talking about also if Kamala Harris, which was an extension of Biden,
Oh, my.
Tim
God.
Walz
Thank
were
you, Jesus.
president. I mean, you're looking, what, we're like 13, 14 months, and Tim Walz, what happened in Minnesota?
All right,
So
Ah.
if he was the vice president, that same fraud would be on a national level. We're seeing that. So guys, you gotta look at it.
We
It's,
would be homeless, Dave. Like, we would be third class, I'm not gonna say second class. We would be in our third class citizens in our own country.
right.
Because they already doing it to us now,
Right.
Americans. Imagine that.
Right.
We would be the new homeless, guys.
Right. Well, look at the city of Chicago, look at the
Look
state
at
of
the
Illinois.
city.
It could be a third world country on a national level, and we'd probably be in World War III right now, right? Because look at how close we were to that under 4 years of Joe Biden, a record peace deals with the president of the United
so
States.
once again,
No.
policy, and to look past the person, the personality, but look at the policies, right?
Right, right. And then to the godly values of that second half
Right.
too of the Trump for MAGA right international movement is the godly values and that moral fortitude that we spoke about.
And they really go hand in
They do,
hand.
they do.
It's, and then what happens is common sense, right?
Right,
Common sense will be common again on policy and godly values.
right.
Immigration and border security are major concerns. So, as you know, what is your stance and what are some solutions that you are willing to bring to Congress?
You go.
Sure, yeah, right. So I mean, that's very simple to answer. It's just, it's as simple as this. You have to put the American people first. Because at the end of the day, you are elected. I'm hopefully going to be elected to be putting you first as a United States representative, not of anybody else, not of any immigrant or anything like that. We're a nation, Bill Clinton, this is interesting that it was said this way. Bill Clinton once said that we are a nation of immigrants, but we're also a nation of laws. Now, we don't like Bill Clinton as a person. Right. We don't like Bill Clinton as a person who thinks he's been involved in. But look at what he said about that. Was he not right? So what should a representative be doing? They should be putting you, the American people, first. That means handling your tax dollars responsibly. That means actually supporting our federal immigration officers, ICE, Border Patrol, border security, continue to finish the wall, expanding the technology that we have to actually enforce border security, that border wall, and then also to our ICE agents. And two, this is not to say that don't buy into the media here. We are compassionate people. We want to have an immigration system that needs to be reformed, that does a better job of letting people into this country who actually want to contribute to this country in a positive way. But by no means ever do we put immigrants, especially illegal immigrants, first over the American people, which is what we're seeing the Democrat Party do, and that cannot be tolerated anymore. So yes, stand with your federal immigration officers, stand with this president's agenda, stand up for yourself too, and your community too. Make sure you're safe. I mean, it's become crazy. Look at what did President Trump call it? The Biden migrant crime. From what they let in. So really, who should we blame for this right now? We see with these immigration raids and everything else. It's not Donald Trump. We're trying to make sure that you are put first, the American people, and your community is made safe again. We should be blaming Joe Biden, the radical left Democrats who let in north of 20 million illegal immigrants. Guys, and so, look at who ICE is targeting. They're actually wanting to target, and they are targeting people who are not contributing at all in a positive way to our society. People who are serial rapists, child molesters, abusers, traffickers, drug traffickers, human traffickers. And look at what happens when we have that open border. You have kids who are being trafficked, migrant children who are being trafficked to our southern border who are abused 30 to 40 times a day. And I know that's a fact because I work with people who are anti-human traffickers who go to rescue children. And this is what they're seeing happen. These are human rights abuses. The Democrat Party and anybody who supported this should be ashamed of themselves for what's happening. So you have to stand with border security. When we have strong borders, we have a stronger, safer country.
Yes, and it's interesting. So Governor Abbott, if you guys remember maybe 3 years ago, and he said, you know what, Chicago, you're a sanctuary city, have them. So they would come over illegally when Biden was president, and then he sent busloads here.
Right.
And then eventually, the Democrats are like, oh, this is getting expensive, send them back, but they didn't. They kept giving them, and what
They
they're
funnel the money.
right, they funnel the money, and what they're doing is, and Zoe and Danielle have been talking about this forever, they're replacing people.
Right.
So they're giving them these ETF cards, they're giving them $8,000 a month, they're doubling the property taxes so people in the communities of Inglewood, the West Side, can't afford it, and they're moving in the illegals for votes. They're breaking the law.
Right.
And now what they're doing is they can't have their way because Trump is president, and now they're going after ICE.
Right.
Immigration and customs enforcement.
Right.
When Donald Trump became president a year ago, on January 20th, 2025, Kristi Noem gave an option to illegals. And she said, if you volunteer with this
Self-deport.
in self-deport, we'll give you $1,000, now it's $3,000, and we'll allow you to legally come into this country. So with the first 10 or 12 months, they went after the criminals. They went after the bad people.
Right.
Now they're doing what the American people requested, and now they're forming paid protesters to attack our law enforcement and ICE. That's totally wrong. So somebody like me as a legislator, I'll ensure that that does not happen. Okay, now when I talked earlier about things that happen that can increase, accountability within law enforcement, we are a country of laws, and we do need to have the rule of law, and we need to support our ICE agents, as Chicago Flips Res does, as Skylar does, as I do. So we need to emphasize that, and our job is to make sure that the law is being carried out, because it's we the people, once again, not they the politicians. They have a different agenda. And the problem is the Democrats have an agenda, and they're doubling and tripling down on this. And in election season, you see this garbage on all the commercials. No,
Mhm.
we're going to talk
That's all
about
they
this.
want.
Right.
That's all they do is say money's crazy.
Right. Yeah, every Senate
They're
commercial.
fighting Trump.
Yeah. It's yeah.
Right.
We hear about abolish Trump's ICE.
We're fighting Trump. No. You're fighting the
Against the
American
people,
people.
yeah.
It's America first, American citizens first, and there's a difference between legal and illegal immigration. So to answer your question, that's the long version. We're gonna do everything to ensure that we're taking care of our borders, as Skylar would on a federal level, I will on a state level, and to make sure that we're allowing our law enforcement and our ICE agents to do their job.
Now,
Right.
imagine if we had the governor, the senators, the reps, that we leave the mayor, everybody working on one accord.
Right.
So for America first, and you all don't get it twisted. Remember back in the George Floyd days, they told you the Democrat Party said defund the police, defund the police. Now think about it. Right now, in the city of Chicago, we are short thousands of police officers.
Yes, we are.
Now they have, your Democratic politicians have police details, but when you call the police, and when we call the police because we have criminals here in our community, I call the police 5 times, they didn't even show up.
No.
Now, has the
So-
community become a safer place or a less safe place?
And then
Yeah,
you
very-
defund the police, you allow them to incentivize you to defund the police, and it hurts you. I called the police 5 times. First of all, take them 40 rings to even answer. I could be dead.
Sure.
But then when they do answer, hey, I'm calling the police. Okay, we'll get somebody over there. Then you call an hour later, hey, the police never showed up. 5 times, and they never showed up. So this is what defund the police looks like for us. Defund ICE looks like for us. The criminals just do what they do, and we are not protected.
They can do whatever they want.
They can do what they
Well, they're letting them
want.
back out.
So don't tell us.
And that's another thing,
Yeah.
because we're getting into federal with the ICE, and we're getting into the House Bill 3653, which is the SAFE Act, which I call the Unsafe Act. So that was signed into law, passed by the Democrats. back in January, February of 2021. So it's been 5 years. And the thing is, they have the no cash bail. So I have a lot of people that are friends that are police officers in the Mount Greenwood community. Your husband, he was a former police officer, and they basically are letting them out on a no cash bail, and they're repeat offenders. So what happens is a lot of these officers are spending 1-2 hours in paperwork, and they're like, I ain't gonna pick up the same guy because he's gonna be back on the streets. So they're not incentivizing them to do their job. And remember, you have the affidavits where they can file complaints. So there's more to lose for that officer to gain by enforcing the law. And then you also have retail theft. So what happened with the Safety Act is it used to be if you stole $300 or more one time, you would be a felon. Now you can steal up to 10 times $1,000. Sometimes it's even $1,500. So now you're doing a couple of things. You're bankrupting these businesses because, and they're passing the expense to us. And also you're allowing the criminals to steal and then go into jail and get out with no cash bail. We also have the monitors. They go on the wrist and the ankles. It used to be 7 days a week. They would monitor them. Now they get a 2-day vacation. So 2 days. Does that make sense to save money? Even though, so the bottom.
Not saving money, it's a waste of.
2 days, they're unmonitored.
They're unmonitored. Right. They're what they want. So the point is, the House Bill 3653 with the 8-5 strategy and other legislators, we're gonna get rid of it. It makes no sense. It's bad for the people and it's bad for policing. And it's a big reason as well why police officers are not responding.
Right.
And they're not responding.
Well, and that too. And so if you look at it, who did the Democrat Party start putting the handcuffs on? They didn't put them on the criminals anymore. They started putting them on law enforcement. Whether you be a federal immigration officer, whether you be a state police officer or a county or citywide police officer. If you are a law enforcement officer under Democrat rule, they make it extremely hard for you to do your job. And we have to make sure that we stand with these officers because they do not make it easy to want to be a police officer anymore. And what happens when you continue to cut the funding for those programs and for those departments, the communities become less and less safe. So it's restore law and order and stop the abuse of your tax dollars because we have criminals running all around our streets. Look at the burden that puts on our system. Right.
And they're doing it in the daytime now. So they're so brazen they can do it. We got to get rid of the unsafe act.
Well, you want to be able to walk safely in your community with your kids, with your family, by yourself, whatever the case, not being worried about whether or not you're going to be lit on fire on a train, whether or not you're going to be, shot at a Christmas tree lighting or stabbed in the neck, like in North Carolina. I mean, what is happening to this country? This is what we talked about earlier. This is becoming a third world country.
And this is also,
law and order.
And this is also to O'Neill Burke. She's the state's attorney that took over Ken Fox. We need aggression. We got Chief Judge Evans over there, 26th in California, and we got these liberal judges. You're not enforcing.
No, and these DAs that are people back in the street, right?
Yeah, but there's what's in there now?
Charles Beach,
Charles,
but he's given the same.
yeah, he's doing the same thing. So the thing is, guys, you get the government you vote for. That's it.
Yeah.
The Democrat Party of 20, 30, or 40 years ago is gone.
Right.
It is now the communism party. And people are realizing that. So either you're gonna vote with MAGA Red or Republicans, or you're not, and you're in on the game.
And you keep the same
The
cycle going, guys. It won't change. When you think of yourself, and I have to keep saying, what do you have to lose?
Right.
Think about year after year after year. The same politicians came to you and told you what the problem was. They know what the problem is because they run on it.
Right.
Every 4 years, they come to you and tell you to the exact what the problem is. But when they get in office, they never fix it and it gets worse.
It gets
so
worse.
unless they know what the problem is. So why aren't they fixing it? So you have to start looking at these things and stop falling for recycled politicians that they are just playing musical chairs.
And point the finger at each other.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
You gotta, in order to have real change, you have to change the entire administration. You gotta flip the whole thing and put a whole new administration. They asked President Trump with the border. Remember, Biden and Kamala ran saying they need bipartisan bill support to close the border. They ran on that, right? Soon as President Trump got in, zero crossing, the border's closed.
Right.
So that lets you know, regular law. So that lets you know, guys, it's the leadership that we keep voting in. Democrats been in here, mayor for Chicago since 1931, and you see it has gotten worse. And Ronner, they keep saying he was governor, he was a rhino, he was a Democrat. So we have to put real Republican in office. We talk about the Republican policies.
And the thing is too, is she is right. I mean, they're recycling the same Democrats. And the thing is, you get the government you vote for. The thing is, this is guys, is myself and Skylar, we're gonna bring that change. I mean, my goodness, he's 25. Charlie Kirk, I remember when I first met Skylar, I dressed like the character Uncle Sam. So I've been doing that 15 years and I give out thousands of flags. So I'm a patriot. But we had an event that was in Homer Glen at Morrow Builders, and Charlie got assassinated on September 10th. And Skylar had told me 9 days later on the 19th, he filed. God led him to run for Congress. And then we had the event all day at Morrow Builders celebrating Charlie Kirk. And I first met Skylar. And at that point, you know, he worked with Charlie Kirk and God had led him. But he's the future. He's here now, 25 years old. He can be doing a million things, but he's decided to fight the good fight for us. So I would say, my goodness, vote Skylar.com. And he's sacrificing himself for the cause. And myself, I've been around for a while. We need fresh new people, guys. We can't recycle the same thing. And that also includes within the Republican establishment and rhinos.
Right.
Okay. We need fresh people. We can't be a part of the system. As far as I'm concerned, it's the Uniparty and then it's the Trump Kirk MAGA Red International Party, because some people realize or don't realize they're working for the other side. We got to take and we got to have fresh new leadership, and that's Skylar and that's myself.
Thank you, David, for saying that. It was like, you know, the reason why we're sitting in this room right now, having this conversation, doing this live stream is because we are sick and tired. We hear you. We are all
We hear
collectively
you.
sick and tired of seeing our own government no longer serve us, the American people. And that ties right into this illegal immigration question, this topic right now. But how could our government possibly be prioritizing other people who are not from our country, who have entered our country illegally, using our tax dollars against us to replace us, which then consequently make our communities less and less safe? So that's why I'm involved as a young person. That's why we're taking a stand here in this room with Chicago Flips Red to talk about this. We're not going to be silent anymore. We're going to build a coalition to represent your voice, godly values, the principles that have built this country, the people's voice, and restore that back in governments, the city, county, state, federal, and international policy to all of these things. Because right now you got to look at this and go, are we going to inherit the American dream or the American nightmare? And under the Democrat Party and under really the Communist Party, the Communist left, it has become the American nightmare. And if we're silent, we continue to just only fuel into what that system is. Remember that quote, silence in the face of evil is itself evil, right? So you have to speak up. You have to be involved right now and stand with these people. Stand together to actually get this done. We have to stand together as united, we the people. There's a reason why the Constitution says that at the top of the page in big bold letters, right? It was to let you know that, hey guys, you, the American people, have the voice. You have the power. You have to use it now more than ever before. Otherwise, we're going to lose this country to communism.
Right. And fair. The thing is, guys, I know people that are starting to speak out, but they're afraid. And everyone has a place. So, like, you know, we like to do the rallies. We're out here and that, but any way you can get involved, you know, and don't be afraid. You know, there's coalitions with Chicago Flips Red. There's us, and there's others that can, you know, work with you and stuff like that. Because the worst thing you can do is to live life in fear and silence. And feel helpless.
Right.
And that's the thing. People feel helpless, so they're immobilized and they're not doing it.
Right.
And
You gotta build coalitions.
Right.
You gotta build coalitions.
right, you need to build coalitions, and we understand that. And that, because if you do nothing, you see the people that are out there, if you do nothing, you're like, oh my goodness, I didn't do anything, and now I'm suffering this consequence.
Right.
I go and I send my kid to school, and one of the consequences is he goes in the boys' bathroom and there's a tampon machine.
Right.
Or he comes home and he's a different gender.
Right.
Or
Or he's walking home on the sidewalk like we see here way too many times in the city of Chicago, and he gets gunned down by
Yep.
gang violence in our streets because we're now defunding the police rather than making sure we have police officers and make sure that we don't allow that to happen anymore. So ask yourself this, city of Chicago, ask yourself this, state of Illinois, ask yourself this, my fellow American, how many more candlelight vigils is it gonna take on the side of the corner, the street corner, where we have moms, aunts, dads, grandfathers, the family who's there crying because their little kid has been gunned down in the street because we don't have law and order, we don't have common sense in this country anymore. We have to reinstate morality in this country. Otherwise, we are going to lose it. And again, you don't have to be somebody who's going to run for office like me and David are. You don't have to, form a coalition like Chicago Flips Red, like Zoe and Danielle have. But you have to be involved at some point. It's like President Reagan had said, all great change starts at the kitchen table. So do not be afraid to have these discussions with your loved ones, with your friends, with your neighbors. And again, we're not going to agree on everything. That's okay. It's the way the system is supposed to work. But you should agree on
Don't agree with my right.
You've got to agree on wanting a better, more prosperous future for every American.
Right, and in Chicago, I gotta say this, they have what they call a safe passage. So they hire people and they put on their orange thing and it's a safe passage. How ridiculous. I mean, it's like, okay, that's good, but the point is, take care of the big stuff, right? We need more officers. Let the officers do their job. And you won't have to have a safe passage. And then also talking to you, the Chicago Teachers Union, what about school vouchers? Let the money follow the kids. $30,000 to $35,000 per kid and only 30% performance level. So you guys are a joke. So the thing is this, we're going to give you a 70% pay cut. You get 100,000, you're down to 30,000. You failed 70%. There's the red ink on you. You guys are bad news. So the thing is on that, let the money follow the students. And a lot of times too, you have kids that have talent. They can go to a magnet school, but because they don't have school vouchers, they are left behind.
Look at the failing system.
It's a
Failing system.
The Democrat Party is-
That's a whole other thing too. I mean, bottom line is we continue this interview. They are so backwards. We need new leadership like yesterday. Right?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
What is your plan to rebuild Illinois' economy and attract businesses back to the state?
David, you want to start first? I mean, that's more of a state level question. I
Yeah.
can answer that.
I will. Well, pretty much everything we mentioned. First off, if you're a business owner and you realize in Chicago, they can steal $1,000 10 times and they're gaming the system and you're in retail, you're out of business. Secondly, is your insurance rates go through the roof. And then number three is you're passing that expense to the consumer. So you're out of business.
Right.
So that right there is the crime issue is huge. Secondly is Illinois is giving away over about 4 billion, I can't keep track no more, of money to illegals. Well, guess what? Why aren't you giving the money away from citizens? And also, when you take that kind of money away, you don't have grants, loans, and other business loans for business.
Right.
So why would they come to Illinois? I know a lot of business owners that have left Illinois and they've left Chicago and they've gone right over the border to Northwest Indiana. Why shouldn't?
Right. Right.
So the thing is you do that. Also, too, is with, like I said, the crime, the economy, and also with the politicians. A lot of them, if we do the Doge, you asked this earlier, we're looking and we're seeing money being wasted in many ways. The Pritzkers, for example, when we had COVID, they made a lot of money off of their companies with masks and other things, and they gamed the system.
Right.
So we need true accountability with where the money's going. We need to take care of crime, which translates to business, and make it more of a business-friendly environment. Right now with the corporate taxes, that needs to be cut too.
Right.
Because the thing is Illinois is not a business-friendly environment. People are leaving in the droves. But also too, if you're a business owner, if people are broke as a smoke, how are they gonna do business?
Right.
You don't want to do business.
Right.
I mean, I'll go into some of the black neighborhoods and I see that a lot of the foreign, people from maybe different countries. And I go in there and I wanted a bag of potato chips and it's a bulletproof glass. And I'm like, what is that? He's like, well, I don't know if you're a killer. So the thing is we need to take care of all these things. And it starts with getting rid of the Democrats. Right now, they're getting like pensions. Right now, for state representative, they're at nearly $100,000. Since 2019, they gave themselves a raise from like 66,000 to $100,000. Right? In 7 years, they've gone up like 50%. Right? What have they done to earn that?
Right.
They've destroyed the state and they're not paid on performance. So I would say all of those things are critically important. And the first thing I would do is get rid of the safety net. And I would allow law enforcement to do their jobs. So if you're a business owner, you feel comfortable to do business and people feel comfortable to do business with you. Secondly is get rid of that with the retail theft. That's huge. Third is that influences their cost of insurance, right? So it's all interconnected.
Right.
And those are some of the things I would do.
Now, so while this is a lot more of a state level issue, let's not pretend like, for a second that there's nothing that I can do at all at the federal level to incentivize this to, grow our economy here in the state of Illinois and bring back jobs and opportunity. Like I mentioned earlier, we have historic investment coming into our country right now, north of $20 trillion of historic investment coming into our country from other nations. So there's really three key points here that could be made that I could do at the federal level. It's incentivize, right? Pressure, and transparency. So transparency in how your tax dollars are used. We have to cut the waste, fraud, and abuse from government so that then we're actually spending our money more efficiently, which will then open the door for larger grants and opportunity that we can channel back to businesses to get them to come back here to the state of Illinois. Sure.
When you say, I just want to give them a clear picture.
Yeah.
When you say cut the waste, fraud, and abuse, do you mean jobs that's just shit? How do you do
Well,
that?
I think part of it is, you have duplicate programs that you see at the federal level, you see at the state level too. Plenty of examples of that online. But some of them, yes, are jobs, but also the federal programs that you see as well, right? Like you want to make sure that somebody, if they could be working, is actually working, right? And that's going to open up the door for more of that funding to be able to channel that money to people who actually need that aid most. So that's what you saw through the DOGE department, right? You can expand some of those cuts too, and you can do it the right way too, and make sure you're still also defending, safety net programs too, like Social Security, as well as, SNAP benefits and everything else that we've talked about too, that the left has, really run away with.
Yeah.
So that's both from the job side, and it's also too through what we're allocating your tax dollars to as well. So there's what we say with transparency, and then incentives. You can incentivize these businesses by now having money that has been freed up and this historic investment coming into our country to channel that to manufacturers who could be doing business here in the state of Illinois. And we have steel manufacturers, one of a family friend of ours, and now been laid off because the steel manufacturing plant is leaving and going to the state of Indiana. Now, again, that's more of a state level issue, but at the federal level, how can we channel grants and opportunity back to those businesses who then partner, right? Because as our system of government is supposed to work this way of, the federal government is working with the state government, with the countywide government, and then local as well down this chain. And we're all helping each other out to best represent you. Is to say, what can we do? How can we channel these resources and partner with the state and local government to make sure that we're offering these grants or providing certain services that are needed to incentivize business to actually come back here to the state of Illinois. So there's your transparency, there's your incentive, and then your pressure is what we can do by saying, I think a great example of it is what President Trump had done to I believe the governor of Maine. And said, well, no, if you're going to continue to allow men to compete in women's sports, right, and you're not going to protect and defend women's spaces, well, then you're not going to get the federal funding from the federal government. We can do that same thing. The state of Illinois is working with a very, very, large budget and a lot of tax dollars. It could be a lot more if they stop, pushing businesses and opportunity away in their tax base. But what can we do at the federal level where we're playing a lot around with a lot more money, a much bigger purse? How can we pull the purse strings to go, hey, Illinois, if you want to, have some of these programs funded, or if you want these things to be done the right way, then you're going to have to come to us, the federal government, and agree with what this is, what's going to be best for the American people. And it's not going to put the American people in a tough situation. What's going to do is it's going to force a Democrat supermajority state like Illinois with a Democrat governor, and hopefully those things change. It's going to force them to actually have to play ball with the federal government.
Right.
If you want this assistance and you want your people in your state to be supported, the right way, well, then you're
No.
gonna have to align with what this is.
Yeah.
And that will help boost the businesses, and that will actually help boost the programs, those social safety net programs for the people, because we're not gonna be abusing your tax dollars anymore. You know, the fraudulent schemes and the Democrat, tens of millions of dollar pet projects that happen here at the state level from JB Pritzker in the last budget, et cetera, and at the federal level, that's not going to exist anymore. Not if you want to have the continued federal funding. So yes, that is jobs, and yes, that is your tax dollars. That's got to prioritize you
Right.
first.
And that is huge because now with Trump in office, he's able to dictate things with federal funds at the state level. Something that I will talk about as well as a big issue is the pensions. And there's a gentleman, he's a great man, he died a couple of years ago, named Adam Andrzejewski. Some people out there know him. It's called openthebooks.com. So it's a federal database to see that union workers are double and triple dipping. There's legislators or CTU that are making $300,000, $400,000, $500,000. And what it is they're cannibalizing the private sector. The public sector unions through pensions are cannibalizing the private sector and businesses. So something I would do, because there's a good book out there by Bill Zettler called Illinois Pension Scale. And it came out in 2010, 16 years ago. On page 5, he talks about the pension system in Illinois in 1970. So it used to be you would retire at 66 in 1970. You can only roll in, you would get a 1.5% COLA, cost of living adjustment, straight. And you can only roll in a half year of sick days to cash out early. And of course, people weren't living as long then. Here we are in 2026, and people retire at 54 and a half. They get a 3% compound COLA, and they can roll in 2 years of sick days to cash out. So people are retiring at 52, 54, 55, and they're living to 85 or 90, and they're paying out $5 to $10 million to
Right.
these people.
Right.
If you do that, and it's not sustainable, and the Democrats know that, but that's how they get their vote.
Yeah, I want to cut in on that too, just
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
federal level, is to say too, this is where the transparency part is so important, is to expose all levels of where, this abuse has been hidden for many years. Whether that's through a duplicate program that's being covered by multiple different agencies, which then you're going, okay, well, you have funding going to this agency and funding going to this agency, but they're somehow still overlapping in terms of what service it is that they're providing. There's a lot of that exists in government. So that's where we have to actually open the books, open the records to go, you basically have to audit this entire thing. We're expected to be responsible with our finances, but the government never seems to be. It seems like a government position is really the only job in this country that exists where you can never really have a deadline, never have to be fiscally responsible, and never really be accountable or ever face an audit and still somehow be elected for your entire life and make a fortune out of doing
And they
it,
can-
which is beyond criminal. It's organized crime.
Right, so they can spend money on a drunken sailor. And I don't know if you've ever seen a drunken sailor, but he spends money.
Right.
So the thing is this,
Duplicate programs, though. It's tied back into that. It's the duplicate programs, duplicate jobs, a duplicate allocation of your tax dollars, and then all of that. The key is transparency. Because unless you recognize you have a problem, you're not going to be able to fix that problem, right? So the first step to solving a problem is recognizing you have one. And then from there, you can start to come up with these, what should be common sense solutions to go, okay, how can we better use our funds and resources and stop just playing in funny money as politicians when it's your tax dollars?
Sure.
And then also go, okay, now what can we do to incentivize those businesses to come back? What can we do to expand tax cuts for small to medium businesses, which is the backbone of our economy, and bring those jobs back to the state of Illinois so that we're employing more people?
Right.
Then your tax dollars do not have to continue to be raised because that tax base continues to shrink, and you get businesses back, like big businesses like Uline, Richard and Elizabeth Uline. They leave, cross right over the border, and go to Wisconsin. I mean, can you blame them as business owners? You can't, because the state of Illinois is making it so hard. But then look at all of those jobs that leave. To our family friend who leaves now because they shut down the steel mill right now, and they go to Indiana. Right now, this country is outperforming Japan in steel manufacturing, steel production. This is historic, the investment that's coming into our country, automotive industry, manufacturing industry. But the state of Illinois is going to be left behind while other states like Indiana, Wisconsin, Iowa, and others all continue to do great. In Pennsylvania, I mean, what is going on? Why is this being allowed? And it's very simple. It is the Democrat Party that is doing this to you. So we have to put fiscally responsible leaders who are in office who understand this discussion that we're having right now. Like, the majority of politicians in Washington could even sit down and have this conversation with you right now because they're contract lawyers.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
They just know how to write, a 3,000 page, spending bill that's about this big, folks, and then put on there and say, hey, we all know that on, page 435, subsection 2, subsection A, that there's a loophole there for our tax
Their
dollars and
idea
everything
of
else. But it
revenue-
does not benefit you and I.
Yeah.
They know how to play the game because they're the ones who are writing it.
Their idea of revenue is more taxes.
Right.
No,
That's
that's
it. And so I will say this is a touchy topic with pensions. But I tell people, and I'm realistic with them, I say, listen, if you have to work an extra 2 years, if you gotta pay a little bit more, would you wanna know now? Or would you wanna know in 8 to 10 years that you're gonna get 30 cents on the dollar? Oh, well, the state of Illinois says the pensions cannot be reduced or diminished. That's great, but what if there's no money?
So, yeah.
Well, how are they gonna pay you off? So do you wanna know now or later? Now you got a tier 1, a tier 2, and they're talking about a tier 3, whatever. But the point is, we need to make it more realistic. We need to go after offenders that are double and triple dipping.
Yep.
A lot of them do that. This
We're
is
gaming the system.
right.
It's
they're
not going to be
double
allowed.
dip- They do that now in the Democrat Party. It's like, shut your mouth, get an extra pension, get 2, get 3,
Yeah,
vote for this
and-
And
politician.
it's not taking benefits away either. That needs to be made very, very clear,
Yeah.
because the Democrat Party and the media wants to say that you're taking away benefits. No, we're not. We're allowing to actually expand
Expand.
benefits by making sure we have more resources that we can allocate to the people who are
Right.
in most need. Now, if we are actually compassionate people and we're supposed to have a compassionate government, that's what you would want to be doing.
Exactly.
Right.
So with the pension thing, so, okay, would you say now the pension that people have now remains the same, Illinois remains the same?
Right.
But, going forward, the new pensions, would you say you would try to find maybe another funding?
Of course, people would be grandfathered based on that. But the thing is, right now, if you look at it and you do that comparison, you're like, how do we go from 66 to 54 and a half? How do we go from a half a year to 2 years? How do we go from a half a year sick days to 2 years? This is how the Democrats have incentivized their workforce. If you look at all the union workers, so if you go to usdebt.clock.org and you hit Illinois, you'll see Illinois is 12, 13 million, whatever, but out of that, maybe 800,000 are pension recipients of the public sector pensions. They'll never lose that voting base, okay? Because those are their voting base of Democrats.
It's leverage.
Right, so this is how they've been able to leverage this for 40, 50 years. The way you should do it is because if you're a business owner or whatever, you're paying for those pensions.
Right.
It's all,
Right.
so what you do is going forward, you would increase it maybe a year or two, nothing crazy, and a little bit more, and then kind of tweak it as you go along. Because the conversation is this: Illinois is broke as a spoke, right? And the thing is do you want to know now if you were broke, or would you want to know later when you're 10 years older and you ain't able to generate an income?
And it's a combination.
And I do this in my business. When I talk to people on my business, because I work in retirement, I'm like, okay, how much money will you need? How much do you pay in taxes? What's your, your life expectancy? So these are realistic conversations, but nobody wants to talk about the elephant in the room.
right.
It needs to be talked about. So I'm sorry.
Well, no, I was just gonna say, it's also that, and it's also too, is the state of Illinois broke? Yes and no. Then you also have the combination of, while that tax base continues to shrink, like we've talked about multiple times in this interview, you have the misappropriation of funds, right? So it's like, if your government is being wasteful with your tax dollars, of course, things are going to continue to get worse because they're not spending money in an appropriate way, which is why we have the issues at the federal level. And then who does that hurt? Everybody from a big business to a medium business to a small business to you, the employee, the American worker, right? Or the person who can't work, who needs government aid. Because again, you could be getting a lot more if you deserve it. And you actually need it if we didn't misappropriate funds.
Right.
Healthcare and senior care are struggling. How would you overhaul public programs to better serve families and seniors?
Sure. I mean, so I think on a couple things on that, we're not gonna ever raise the, age for, social security. That's not gonna be a thing, but we do have solvency issues, for sure. So I think one of the things that we can do is we can make different investment accounts for that. Again, it goes back to transparency, make sure we're not misappropriating funds anywhere, in any of those investment accounts and, what people have always continued to pay into. So anything that you've continued to pay into, throughout your entire career, your entire time of being in the workforce as an American laborer, right? At no point are we ever going to cut those benefits from you. But we do have to come up with solutions to make sure that we're continuing to being able to pay in that system. And maybe that's allowing people when they're younger to be able to pay in more into that system and see what we can do too with public and private partnerships to figure out what we can do with having more charitable resources as well. We're not going to steer away from that too. So to see what we can do to have fiscal responsibility, also to lower the pricing and the cost through, what we can do to keep the inflation down. Because as we all know, if you're on a fixed income, which I mean, technically we all are, but if you're on a fixed income and you're a senior or you do need a social safety net program, what we can do to make sure you're not paying any taxes on it. No tax on social security. It's very simple. And I'll remind everybody who's viewing this right now, every single Democrat voted against that.
Yeah.
Every single Democrat voted against that. Every single Democrat voted against too, no tax on tips and no tax on overtime. And I'll actually,
They do.
which is absurd, right? So I say we expand all of those things and we actually can pay into the system even more. And we can make sure that people are receiving more and more benefits because government just has to start working efficiently.
Right.
And then you can actually start to solve the problem. So you do it through different investment accounts. You do it through health saving accounts.
Right.
You also, I think you could do it too by saying if you're over a certain age, you're not going to pay property tax anymore. Right.
And
Yes,
it's
we-
weird.
Yeah, you're not going to pay tax on these benefits anymore. My grandmother's 88 years old. Why is she having to choose between, being able to take her family out to a dinner, do something for a holiday, figure out what you're going to get to have for, your Christmas dinner, whether or not she can afford her pharmaceutical medication, whether or not she can afford her insurance, and whether or not she's going to have to pay tax on her Social Security. But Democrats continue to, say things like, well, we're going to want to make sure that you'll tax if you take out a home equity loan so that you can pay off your high interest debt. And more people right now, look at what's happened in the last 4 years under Joe Biden. You have more and more people who are taking out high interest credit card debt because they cannot afford anything. So they're having to choose. And that's just wrong. And that's not the way the government should work. So I think, continue to expand what we can do with those social safety net programs, what we can do with Social Security, what we can do with making affordable healthcare actually affordable, and do things like, protecting pre-existing conditions. And also to coverage for young people, some of those things that I agree with, but let's not be fooled here. The Affordable Care Act is not.
I mean,
affordable. Yeah,
it's the unaffordable, I don't care act.
Well, think about this. You might have through Obamacare, you might actually have a very, very low monthly premium, right? But that deductible on like a bronze plan for the Affordable Care Act is so incredibly unaffordable. We're talking many thousands of dollars. Never actually get paid out.
I sell health insurance.
Right.
No.
So how is that fair to the American people too? And also too, how would it be fair to say too, we're going to raise the age of Social Security? When, if you look at this, look at how many people, it's like right now, they want to continue to, corrupt evil people in our government want to continue to make you less and less healthy. This is why the work of RFK Jr., it's so important right now through DHS, Department of Health and Human Services, that is HHS. Look at what they're doing to you, the American people, by saying we're going to continue to make you sicker and sicker and sicker. And then by the time you ever get to receive any of these benefits that you've paid into your entire life, you're now not alive anymore, right? So by all means, right, if you're a corrupt politician, let's just raise that age of Social Security, right? So I think it's, again, you got to come to the meeting table and the discussion here and actually have a logical discussion about this and say, all right, how can we make this fiscally responsible? What can we do to ensure transparency? And how can we provide more benefits for the American people?
Mhm.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Now with Social Security, so what I do is I do life insurance, annuities, Social Security. I am health insurance licensed. So to answer that question with seniors, a lot of seniors are on fixed incomes, but guess what? Their income's the same, but taxes and expenses are going up. So there's very little to work. Right? They're hurting. They're hurting. So Social Security, you can draw it early at 62. Or you can wait till 70. Most people, they call it FRA, full retirement age. It's usually around 67 right now. If you are single and you make more than 25,000 with deductions on your adjusted gross income from 25 to 34,000, they tax you 50% on your social security. If you make more than the 34, then you're taxed 85%. Get rid of it.
Right, right.
Okay. Secondly, is if you're married, it's the parameters, I believe, are 35 and 44, 50%, and anything over is 85%. Get rid of it. They should, they did it in the 80s, taxing social security, get rid of it.
Yep.
Getting to Medicare and Medicare supplements. A lot of times they have like different plans of coverage, tier 1, 2, 3 for medications. And when you do, I have friends that do the Medicare, I don't deal with it, but I call it the alphabet soup of confusion. You know, do I get this program and that program? They should make it more affordable, in my opinion, on different types of medications, because that becomes expensive for seniors on fixed incomes. So that's very important. Property tax, we were talking about this, Skylar made reference. There was a gentleman that mentioned this, and he's like, I'm 84 years old. I've been in my house 83 years old. I've been in my house for 58 years. I've given these people a lot of money. Why am I still paying property taxes? So something I'd like to propose would be, if somebody's in their house or paid on a mortgage for 30 years and they were either age 70 or 75, they would be exempt a certain portion of their property taxes. Right now, I do property tax appeals for my clients. There's exemptions, there's veterans, there's homeowners, there's freezes. They don't even realize it. So when I file for them, a lot of times they're able to go back 4 years. Usually it's about $750 per year. So that's $3,000 in their pocket. What I would suggest and advise legislation and working with Skylar on a federal level is a certain break point. If somebody's in their house or they're paying on a mortgage, and they're paying property taxes for 30 years or 35 years at age 70 or 75, that they would be exempt a certain percentage of their property taxes. It would be 30 or 50%, because guess what? You guys deal with this. I live in England. I'm paying $4,000 and this joker increased my property taxes 80%. Now I'm paying $7,200. I'm gonna walk away from the house. The crackheads are gonna go in there, or they're gonna give it to an elite.
Right.
Does that make any sense?
No. I wanted to,
And you paid all your life.
You paid all your life and they're taking away your house and you're gonna lose your equity as
I
well.
wanted to bring this discussion back into healthcare before we go on to the next question here. I think some of the ways too that you've solved the healthcare affordability crisis in this country right now is you get away from bigger and bigger government, right?
Yeah.
And this is where transparency is important, because while we do have the social safety net programs like Medicare, Medicaid, and then too, like we've talked about with Social Security, et cetera, you got to make sure you do cut that waste, fraud, and abuse. Not to keep saying that, but that is the truth. You have to cut that waste, fraud, and abuse from government to make sure that we're spending money efficiently so we can fund programs more. Now, at the same time, too, with these systems as well, you have to expand savings accounts, investment vessels, be strategic, with your finances, actually educate people at a young age too about, about fiscal responsibility. And then also, too, you got to cut out the middleman with some of these things too, make sure there's no price gouging too from the pharmaceutical companies right now through, most favored nation, right, to make sure that our country's currently experiencing what will now be through Trump RX, the lowest prescription drug prices, right, and access to other things as well. And then too, another discussion with that too is looking at the national security threat too of the Chinese Communist Party too, manufacturing a lot of our pharmaceutical drugs. That's just a danger. And then too, what we can do too to increase healthcare competition, right? Because if you have just universal healthcare, you can see how that's worked out for the UK, how that's worked out too in certain states that try to implement that, like out west. And then also too for Canada, you got longer wait times. That's what's happened now under Obamacare, Affordable Care Act. It's become unaffordable. The government is going to get bigger and bigger, and then hospitals experience larger, increased wait times because people are using that as primary care. Because not every doctor's office wants to accept that. So you have to do some privatization of that. You have to increase competition, increase transparency, And then I think to bolster those safety net programs by making sure your government is using your tax dollars efficiently, not hard concepts. And I think, Dave, what do you want to talk about at the state level? I think we could work in collaboration with one another at the federal and state level to make sure that we're doing that. Which really comes down to first, how are we using the American people's tax dollars, right? That's the number one thing, and addressing that we have a problem.
Yeah.
Right, and then you increase that competition and look at what happens when you have a free market, you have free competition, your pricing actually always naturally decreases, right? Because really, when government controls it all, to the American people, there's a question: is that any different than a monopoly? No, it's a government-run monopoly then. And then you have, look at what that's done to the
We want a
VA,
free
right?
enterprise system,
Right.
and that way it makes prices more
Yeah,
reasonable.
universal healthcare will unequivocally, that will fail the American people and make things less and less affordable. No. Less and less affordable, you'll have longer wait times and you'll have a decrease in care, and then your hospitals will be overwhelmed too. And I'm saying this too from experience of knowing this too. My family has been in this in the medical background for a healthcare background for as long as I've been alive. My mother has, my mother's actually an X-ray tech. She's been very, very involved in hospitals. I was born at Christ Hospital, and she's worked at Christ Hospital for many years, was for a long time, I think, a #1 trauma center. So we've seen a thing or two about, how this is actually working and what this has done to wait times and everything else. So universal healthcare, folks, that is a lie being sold by a socialist and communists in our government that want you to believe that if the government takes care of everything, all of a sudden everything will be much better. Ask any communist regime how that's worked out. And you don't have to go to communism anymore too. You got a broken arm, you got like a multi-week wait time, to be even seen in a place like Canada and the UK. And then two, rather than actually, do things like Trump passed this, and Trump term #1 was right to try. Or if you're terminal, you have a right to try some experimental medication. When instead, I believe a state like it was either Washington State or Oregon that had told this woman before and said, that's more of a universal healthcare system there. They had said, well, we're actually not going to allow you to use this experimental medication, something that could be life-saving treatment for you, but we are going to send you out a pamphlet and a mailer to show you how you could commit assisted suicide, which is now a big thing here in the state of Illinois. How is that healthcare? That's not healthcare when, on the table.
And that would be appeal to the assisted suicide.
About the suicide?
And I would have to
That's
repeal that.
that's representative of what the Democrat Party has become, and that's representative too of what happens when healthcare becomes co-aligned with bigger and bigger government, right? So you have to start to privatize, you have to take care and expand those social safety net programs through efficient use of taxpayer dollars. And then also to have that transparency too, to make sure you know where those tax dollars are going, and incentivize competition. So you can say, hey, I'm going to pick and choose my doctor. I'm going to do those things. I'm going to find out. I'm going to seek it myself, or maybe even through a broker, right? Is to go, who's going to have the cheapest, most affordable healthcare for me.
Doctors left the medical profession because of the unaffordable I Don't Care Act.
Yeah, right. Yes,
They
right.
left.
Yeah, right.
And because it's
And again, these hospitals are overwhelmed. So what happens? You got people who are not okay, who are in the hospital, and they're not receiving necessarily the care that they need. Ask anybody who's in healthcare who actually works there, a nurse, an X-ray tech, anybody, an ER doctor, say, hey, is the Affordable Care Act actually working? Every single one of them will tell you no. We should have like roundtables and actually talk about this with the people, not just bureaucracies, not bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. and lobbyists, none of that. Actually get down and talk to people who experience this every single day, who are healthcare heroes, who are working to save lives. While you, the American people, are paying into the system, you've got to make sure that it serves you, and then watch what happens for our healthcare workers too. They're going to have a sigh of relief as they're not overburdened.
Here's a shout out to Stephen Tucker. He's always on 560 AM, and he actually read the whole 2,000 pages of the unaffordable I Don't Care Act. He's an expert. But what's interesting about it is we've talked about it. It's just unaffordable. It isn't, and it's eliminated that free market system. So on a federal level and on a state level, we'd have to eliminate that definitely, and allow the free enterprise system before that. Because right now, if somebody, like, I have the ability to write health insurance, but I stay out of that area. But if you go onto the healthcare.gov, people are getting subsidies still of 80-90%. And their deductibles are $8,000 to $10,000.
Right.
So they're ridiculous.
It's entirely unaffordable.
Totally unaffordable.
It's wrong to even call it that.
It is. It's the unaffordable I Don't Care Act. So that needs to revamp.
Right. But at the federal level with Washington continues to just kind of kick the can down the road and not bring experts and the American people to the discussion because all of a sudden we just want to pass it through because we then are coming up on a hard deadline. And again, that's what I said. It's the only job that you could have where you can come up on a
I'll
deadline.
read the bill after.
Right, and continue to fail the American people, but somehow stay in office.
Stand
Right, so we may never actually have what would maybe be considered a perfect solution, but what we do know right now is that the so-called solution right now is actually not a solution.
it's not
Right,
working.
so you gotta come to the table and start to go, hey, we cannot continue to do this anymore, because eventually at some point the bubble is gonna burst.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, it's gonna.
Yeah.
Yes.
Got one question and then the final question. How do you plan to work across party lines to get results in a divided government?
Well, I mean, this is the deal is I've negotiated, in my business, I've done real estate. Donald Trump, his book is The Art of the Deal. I think it came out in 1980. So he does have that ability, even though the media says TDS, and you have to work with him. And what's interesting is when you talk with legislators. So in this case, right now, we're going to reverse that. There's 78 Democrats. There's 40 Republicans, whatever the number is, and the House is people are people. And all this drama, it's like, let me give you a story before I answer this. So I had a friend of mine and he worked as an Andy Frank usher at the International Amphitheater. If everyone remembers, it was on 43rd and Halston. And they had all these events. So this was 1978. So he's watching wrestling. You ever see those professional wrestlers? They bounce around. So it was his first day, and they said, "Hey, you watch these old ladies because they're crazy. They throw stuff into the ring, and they're wild." So anyhow, he watched this wrestling, and you have good guys and bad guys, right? So he's watching it, and then after the wrestling match is over with, he walks around the amphitheater. It's a big place. And he opens up the door and he hears, "Shut the door." And he shuts the door, and it's a bunch of the bad guys and the good guys all drinking beers and smoking cigars. It's like, wait a minute. They put on this show before us, but then all of a sudden they're buddy and buddy in the background. So my point is, a lot of this drama between the Republicans and the Democrats, a lot of them work in collaboration behind closed doors against us, right? But also they work together because it's common sense. So behind the drama, if something affects them personally, for instance, if I'm working with a Democrat and they're like, "Dave, I'm really upset with this Senate Bill 2412 that allows kids to get sex changes and abortions." I had a daughter, she got an abortion, I didn't even know. It affected me, and I passed it because I'm a Democrat. Or my kid came home a different sex and I didn't know about it. These are real life things that affect. So I feel I can talk with the people that want to talk about that on common sense policies that affect them in real life situations, right? Not all the drama and the this and the that, because there's people you can talk to like that, right? You can sit down and you can say, how does this really affect you personally? And it has in real life situations. So based on that, I can relate to people. I could talk with them and say, "Hey, let's cut the crap. Right? Let's get down to brass bones.
Right.
Does this make sense? Is this common sense? Is this good for you? Is this good for your future? You have kids. Why do you have kids? Why do you pay a mortgage? Because I want to have a legacy, right? So I want to make sure I leave it better for my kids, my grandkids. So I can cross those aisles. I'm strong in my values, obviously. I'm a Trump, Kirk, MAGA, red, but I'm not a radical. I have common sense. So I will talk to them and that, because the reality is you have to work, right? And it's for the betterment of the people. So I have that ability and I will be able to do that.
Yeah, I think just following that up too, at the federal level in Washington DC, is both myself and David are running as outsiders in politics. But by no means does that mean we don't understand the way the political system works. And for my race, my campaign, I'll point to my own background. For my work with the United States Patriot Society, we have written and endorsed legislation. We have passed successfully legislation here in the Democrat supermajority state of Illinois. So how did we do that? It's all about the way that you write this and who you engage with. If you're actually there as a representative in the office, or you're there as a representative in the communities, and you're meeting with the American people, you get to know what their needs, their wants, and their interests are. And then talk with them and say, okay, what is it that's going on? What can we expose? We've done that through our chapter networks to say, okay, all of a sudden we didn't realize that this was here, but this could be a loophole for some kind of form of abuse. And then you write the legislation in such a way and negotiate with the other side in such a way that then you can actually pass this legislation. And it's kind of hard to explain right now, but you really you do it by just meeting with everyday people. You do what your job is supposed to be, which is being a representative.
Sure.
And you say, okay, well, what is it that's going on? What do you need in your community? And then you go, hey, look, guys, here's the receipts, right? Here's what the people who are electing you, who make sure that you get to continue to be in office, here's what they're telling you that they want. So again, I'll point to my own record, my proven leadership, proven conservative leadership in a Democrat supermajority state like Illinois, and in my time on campus at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, a very liberal area, and what we've been able to do to continue to bring back your voice and your values to those areas and write and endorse and pass legislation despite it being a Democrat supermajority and a Democrat governor. And then I think also too is, we answered this question a little bit earlier, just to say, again, we're not going to agree on everything. That's not the way that this system is supposed to work. We're not going to agree on everything. It's actually healthier to not agree, right?
Yeah.
To have open debate and discussion. That's what our friend Charlie Kirk had done. So I think, really open the door up for more of those discussions too, and make sure the American people are being heard first, and then incentivize some accountability on politicians too. Like maybe a great idea would be term limits, right? If you had term limits, all of a sudden maybe the politicians would want to, get off their hands and actually start to work for the American people. Or so otherwise you're not going to get paid for certain things, for underperformance, like we talked about, where kids are getting failed. So you have to incentivize accountability in government and incentivize that transparency. And it's also too in the way that you write and endorse legislation. I have the track record of proving that, and say, hey, we should be able to agree on wanting a better, brighter, more prosperous future for all Americans, that American dream, to restore the American dream again.
Okay. Any final words for young Americans and future leaders about civic responsibility and engagement?
Okay, yeah, being a young candidate, right, I'll take that one away for my generation, for the next generation underneath me, and our children's children to come, is ask yourself this: what kind of country do I want to see? Right? Where do I want to see yourself? And you're here, this as you're being raised up here through the system. That's what's nice about my candidacy is I just went through your system, right? I went through college. I'm still a college student at the at Liberty University, and through my Catholic high school education and went through public grade school. So I've seen it through many, many different sides of the spectrum here, for public education and private education. And I've seen the issues and the needs for you. If we continue to spend money like we are as a country right now, you're going to be in what we are now calling debt slavery right now. And it's absurd. So my question to you is, what kind of country do you want to see? Where do you see yourself? Where do you want to see yourself in 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now? Have a sense of a plan, just like you would for a job interview and for business and for finances and for your goals. And ask yourself, what kind of country do I want to have? Do I want to, again, like we talked about earlier, do I want to inherit the American dream that my parents and my grandparents and my great-grandparents and generations before them were all able to chase and have be an affordable reality? Or do I want to have the American nightmare? I know nobody would want to have the American nightmare, but under Democrat control and Democrat leadership, which has really become the party of communism, you are starting to see the American nightmare, where people are suffering in our communities and you're not being prioritized anymore. And again, that frivolous, stupid spending as a government. It no longer, government should be serving your needs, putting your voice, your interests first. So to our young people is, don't be afraid to get involved. You do not have to run for office. You don't have to, go give powerful speeches and motivate others. What you should do is you should sit down and have a conversation first with yourself and say, where do I want to see things go? And then with those closest to you, your friends, your family, your neighbors, and say, hey, this is what's going on. This is what's actually happening in our communities. And guys, if we don't get involved and we don't speak up, or at least do our part to keep each other informed, we're not going to have a recognizable country anymore. And the last 4 years were very, very representative of that. So if you want to be able to chase the American dream, and you want to have the American dream be an affordable reality again, you've got to be involved. You got to use your God-given gift, which is your voice, which is defended in our great United States Constitution. and then either run for office, go be a leader, be a community leader, run for a federal office like I am at 25. Don't be afraid. 365 times in the Bible says that, do not be afraid. So go forward, engage with others, be a strong community leader, be a strong advocate for your voice and your causes. And two, I'd say, support groups like Chicago Flips Red, support myself running for United States Congress, Skylar Duensing, and support David Dewar running for State Rep District 35. People are willing to sit down and have the conversation with you, the American people. But please, please, please use that voice. Understand the Constitution says we, the people, in big, bold letters for a reason. It's time to restore government of, by, and for the people. That starts with you. Don't let anybody tell you that you are too young to do anything, or that you're too young to have a voice, and that you're just only one person. No, last I checked, there's 333 million Americans in this country. And I want to make sure every single one of you are represented.
Nice. Well, Skylar, man, oh man, 25 years old.
Appreciate
You're
that.
going to Congress. So what a great example right here next to me. I'm proud to be with him. I would say, your voice counts. A lot of times as a young person, depending on your self-esteem or where you're at, get involved in what you like to get involved in. Like when I was in high school, I liked sports. I was a gym rat. I liked basketball. But, whatever it is, your early years are important. They form your future, so yeah, I would say, be involved, whatever you like to do. It can be, acting. It can be civic events. It could be sports, but always feel that your voice matters. And what you do when you're young will really formulate in your foundation as you go into adulthood. As far as getting involved politically, I didn't till late in life. I was an election judge, as I spoke earlier, and then eventually I felt, God had called me for political office to take my skills or that God gave me to go forward. But I would say, and always too is, we didn't really get into this, but it's important to, I think what's happened over the last 60 years is we don't have really as many households of two Americans, meaning a father and a wife and a full family. And that's another thing the Democrats have done. They've taken one of the parents out, and there's a lot of single moms out there that are raising kids alone. And I give you kudos to that. And it's very difficult. And now it's so unaffordable to live, to raise, make money, put bacon on the table, as they say, and to raise your kids. So, I would, encourage that, and that comes to godly values, that comes to, having, following God and having a full family, a father and a mother, which helps. And to have that and to leverage your parents, and really talk with older people. What helped me too is I would talk to older people and have them advise you and direct you. Because they've been there, they've done that, and always ask questions. You can ask me questions, you can ask Skylar questions as he's formed into the great man he is today, and get that advice. But always feel that you have a difference. Don't let anyone, and I might, like I said, I have my sort of values in that, but believe in yourself, believe in God, and go for it. Be confident in what you do. And like I said, get the advice of people that have been there to guide you. So that's what I would say. And then if God calls you to go into a certain direction, go for it. I have a saying, I have a friend that's sitting here named Dave Wiersma. He's part of our little group. And he was a big sports guy, softball, and he had success. And we talk about it, you play to win, not to lose. And this is what we're doing. We've already won it either here or in God's eyes. So we play to win, not to lose. And that means don't be fearful. Fear can crush you. Be tenacious and go for it. And if you don't have the strength, then you have friends that will, or you have God. So that would be my advice to young people.
I just want to conclude with that. First of all, say thank you to David Dewar, one of our state representative, District 35 here in the great state of Illinois. Thank you for what you said about me, your kind words. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. Thank you too for your patriotism. And again, too, we're patriots. We're not just patriotic, right? There's a very big difference. And my last three closing remarks too for advice for young people is this, and for anybody who's listening is this. The number one thing is have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. It will be the greatest decision you will ever make in your entire life. And then beyond that is then to believe in yourself and believe in the American dream. It is a privilege, a beautiful privilege to be an American. So God bless you all. And thank you. Yes, have that relationship with Jesus Christ. Believe in yourself and believe in the great American dream. And we're going to restore it. VoteSkylar.com, RepDavidDewar.com. God bless all
Oh,
of you
and
guys.
also, too,
Chicago
is-
flips red,
Right.
right?
Yeah, and I'm so thankful that Chicago flips red. As a matter of fact, I have the T-shirt right.
That's
I
right.
have to go, Chicago flips red, baby.
Yeah.
So, they set the standard and we wouldn't have this interview without Zoe, without Danielle, without Jessica Jackson,
That's right.
and the rest of the Chicago flips red. They are the standard, my goodness, and they're tenacious and there's somebody to follow. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you for having us. And thank you to all of you too for listening and tuning in too. God bless each and every one of you too, and be brave and use that powerful voice that God has given you. Certainly, we're in a time right now as a country, as a world, where we need it.
God
God
bless
bless
you.
you. Thank you all so much. Thank you.
Guys.
Right.
All hands on deck.
See, everybody
All
get out there
right.
and vote.
That's
Bring
right.
that Republican ballot. Guys, go vote. Look, get that Republican ballot passed. Listen, we gotta do this. We
Hey,
have to do this.
I want everyone to go tonight and fill up your bathtub, grab a surfboard and ride the red wave. We do that.
It's coming.
Better
It's coming.
policies.
It's coming.
Yeah, safe.
Common sense, right?
Yeah, better policies, safer
Yep,
streets.
yes.
Thank you, Zoe. Thank you, Danielle. Thank you, Jessica Jackson. Thank you to all, everybody at Chicago Flips Red. Thank you, God. Thank you, Jesus Christ. And thank you, President Trump.
Yes.
And thank you to all of you. You have the power. Thank you, guys. God bless
On
you.
point, baby. Thank you, President
How
Trump.
that? Great interview.
Thank you.